How to talk to my spouse about their sexual addiction. This is an important topic. If you're watching this, I want you to really pay attention, maybe take some notes. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, we have so much help for you as a partner of a sex addict. We have support groups for you, phone groups, telephone counseling. You can come do an intensive, get neuromodulation for the trauma, understand your trauma. There's so much for you. I want to get to this topic immediately, so subscribe if you haven't. Hit the questions if you have any. We want to get to those as soon as possible. Well, how do I talk to my spouse if I believe they have a sexual addiction? Well, let's just back up a little bit. You want to get informed. If they have a sexual addiction, you want to be informed of the 6 different types of sex addicts. Our book, The Final Freedom, covers that. You want to know that, whether it's, biological based, where they were masturbating and doing porn as a kid and a teenager all the way into their marriage with you. You want to know if there's in psychological, like if there was a mom missing, a dad missing, if there was abuse from a family member, physical trauma, being bullied or whatever. You want to know if there's kind of a spiritual absence or spiritual abuse. You want to know if there is a mood disorder, because if there is, you might be having to talk about 2 different things. And also you want to understand intimacy and anorexia, because that might be what's driving some of the addiction. So the first thing you want to do is not get into a conversation. You want to get informed. And I would say get intelligent information. You can Google yourself into a nightmare. Okay. I've worked with sex addicts for 40 years. I've seen thousands of them get better. And it didn't really matter how bad it was. Some of them had sex with 200 people. Some masturbated, some did porn. Some did all kinds of crazy stuff with people that were close to the circle that you were in. And I've seen all of them heal that want to heal. So I want to give you hope first if they want to change. And that is the variable. If there's no desire to change, especially after you have a conversation with them, you need to accept that they want the addiction, and that they might want the addiction more than they want you. And especially if you're in a vulnerable situation financially, they might have figured that they can do whatever they want because they make the money. And if you're in a situation like that, then you're solving the wrong problem first. You want to solve the problem of becoming financially stable, or at least moving in that direction. Because if you're going to speak up and you're already created a system where your voice has no power, you have no power, and he or she might believe, you know what? I pay everything around here. You just put up with it. And just like an alcoholic, if you want to leave, there's the door. Like if you have no value in the relationship, this conversation might reveal that to you. And you might not be prepared to realize that you're not the first love, that you're not the wanted one, that the addiction's the wanted one and you're the manager. And so if you're unprepared emotionally for that, you're not ready to have this conversation. So get informed. Number 2, get support first. Now, I would say get intelligent support. You can call my office at 719-278-3708. Talk to a coach or a counselor. Get some support. Talk about your situation. Talk about your particular situation, your particular spouse that you want to talk to, the history that you have. And they will also be able to maybe help architect how to have this conversation, what you want to do or not do in the conversation. So it's always good to get specific help. I'm giving you general tools right now, but get some specific help and get some support. Get in one of the groups. Listen to some of these ladies for maybe a month or 2 before you go ahead and jump in and have this conversation. Because unless he gets help, his addiction is not going to change. But if you change over the next 4 to 5, 6 weeks, you're in a stronger place to address it. Because if you are not in a strong place, you might just get rolled over. And if you've gotten rolled over again and again and again, you need to evaluate that he's not the variable, that you might be the variable. So definitely get informed, definitely get support. Now, let's get pragmatic. Do not have this conversation at home. Do not have it in the bedroom. Do not have it when you're angry. Do not have it immediately if he's gotten caught. If you found stuff on the internet, you found a phone number, you found something, give yourself a little time to compose yourself and compose what you're going to do before you go in and do it. because you might want to react, and your reaction might become the focus. Look how angry you are. Look how out of control you are. You do not want to be the problem when you are having this conversation. So the social norms that you have at home are quite different range than if you were in a public place. So if you're going to have this conversation, I would say have it in a public place. Now, not where you're on top of other people, but in a restaurant where you can be quiet, or in a park where you can be on a bench, or in a situation where people are around, and just say, hey, I want to talk to you about something. Because here they can't yell and scream at you. Here they can't act out of control, and they can't bring up all your past and gaslight you and trick you. It's a more contained situation. Now, you can go at a soft approach. The soft approach is asking questions. Okay, not coming from a position of, I'm telling you, I'm asking you. I'm asking, do you have any concerns about whatever the behavior is, the pornography, the girlfriends, the chat rooms, whatever it is? Do you have concerns about that in your life and in our life? Do you have concerns where that's going long term? Do you have concerns that can lead us into a much further aggressive behavior? And what are you doing to prevent that? I just ask questions like that. But then you can go down some of the addiction questions. Have you ever tried to stop this? Like, even without telling me, you just kind of promise yourself, like, I got to stop this. I got to grow up. And have you ever done that? And did it work? No? Okay. Have you had any consequences at work, or any other consequences? Yes or no? The time you put into this, does it feel like you used to play soccer, you used to go do this with the kids, and used to do that, but now you're tired all the time because you're up at night late, and it's affecting your social life. It's affecting you working out. It seems like it's affecting different things in your life. What do you think? And again, you're investigating, which is a better way to be than declaring. Declaring is, you are doing this, you're doing that, and automatically the addict will get defensive. Asking questions, you're less likely to get a defensive thing, and also asking open-ended questions about this. When you go without this, does it feel like it hurts? Does it feel like you're looking for your phone if you can't find it, if the battery's dead? Or do you feel like you're in some kind of anxiety if you don't feel like you can act out in some way? I care about you. Even no matter what happens for us, I care about you. And so what do you think? Is it taking more of your time? Are you getting into more different kinds of things than you thought? All of these are, in the yes position, symptoms of any addictions. It takes more and more, okay? It's taking more of your time, trying to stop but not being able to. And if you get several of the yeses, you can say, these are questions that have to do with addiction. And I think that we should look at this. What do you think? Would you be willing to watch some YouTubes? Would you be willing to maybe talk to a professional and get a real assessment? On our website, we have the 6 Types of Sex Addicts test, which tells them what type of sex addict they are. Do you have a history when you were a teenager in 20s where you were masturbating a lot and doing porn? Oh, well, that sets you up with a sexual template to prefer object stuff. As you ask these open-ended questions, be prepared for various responses. First, anger. Anger is a very common reaction when you're dealing with addiction, because they don't want to give up their binky. They don't really want to change. And so getting angry at you and pushing you off is a very normal response. If you're getting that response, that's emotion. You cannot reason with emotions. So please don't spend any time trying to make your points, to say, you know what, it looks like you got angry. Let's just table this and move on, because you just found out what you really want to know. Are they ready to change? The whole purpose in talking about the addict is to find out, do they want to change? Well, if you get a huge anger response, they don't want to change. Now, you want them to change, and you might try to conform them to that, but the reality is they don't want to change. Okay. You might get a combative response, gaslighting. You're the problem. If you would just do this, if you do that, if you weren't this way, then I wouldn't do that. You might get gaslit. You need to be prepared that any of these responses are, I am not ready to get ready. I am not ready to heal. I am not ready to give up my addiction. I'm not ready to do life without my binky, whatever the binky is. In this case, sexual addiction, be pornography, masturbation, flirting, intriguing, sexual behavior with others, just whatever it is, chat rooms. And they're not ready to do life without that. That's where they go for acceptance, love, unconditional acceptance, where there's no commitment on their end. There's all kinds of reasons that it might be biological, or they've been doing this for 20, 30, 40 years. And so they don't know how to emotionally mature without the addiction. Of course, it's all possible in recovery. But if you are addressing the addiction, you need to understand you're probably 50-50 chance of getting a positive response. What I find is a lot of spouses think they're in like a 90-10, where if I just make my argument, if I just show him how it hurts me, like if he really loves me or she really loves me, they would change. No, they are immature in love, and they depend on the addiction. And so you might have ideas that are different than their ideas. You might think that you have greater value. Addicts are immature. Okay, there's a whole video called "When You Marry a Child, Don't Expect a Man Right Away." And I go through like a couple hours of explaining all that. The addiction robs you of spiritual, emotional, and moral maturity. So they're not making good choices. And it doesn't make sense, and it doesn't make sense to you. But if you try to make what makes sense to you make sense to them, you are probably going to get a response that you're not prepared for. So be prepared for the worst. Now, whatever that means for you, that might mean where you say, well, if you're not willing to change, then I am going to X. But do not threaten. If you're going to do X, do X. You can inform them, or you can just do it, but do not threaten. Because if you threaten and you don't follow through, you've affirmed to them that you are weak, unable to change yourself, and you're asking them to change. And we call that the hot potato in the video called Unstuck. So if you feel stuck, that's a great video for you, because in there, one of the conversations I have is you suggest to them that they should change, and they suggest to you that you should change, and they throw up, and it just goes back and forth, and nobody changes and nobody matures. So you have to be willing to, if you're going to make a declaration, you have to be willing to stick to it all the way to whatever you are promising to do. Now, the other thing in talking to your spouse about their sexual addiction is be prepared for them not to change. Take whatever action you're going to take, and it might get worse before it gets better in the relationship. Giving up an addiction is like giving up a binky. If you've ever taken a binky away from the baby, they cry, they scream, they act like screaming babies. And in the same way, addicts act the same way. So if they're not willing to change, then this goes back to you doing your own steps. You are powerless over the addict. There's nothing nothing you put on the table. Beauty, handsomeness, money, success, family. There's nothing on the table that matters to the addict except the addiction. So if you're thinking you're gambling and you're trying to make sense with them, you're not making sense to them at all. Because you're saying, take away the most important thing so I could not enjoy life. That's how they're hearing you. And so it feels very threatening to them. So whatever a person protects is what they love. If they protect the addiction, you need to accept that. And part of my career, the hardest thing is people accepting that they are second, third, or fourth in their spouse's relationship order. So if you're going to talk to them, open-ended questions, get support yourself, get education yourself, but also you might want to consider doing an intensive, doing work for yourself so that you are good either way. And that's probably where you need to be before you have that conversation. If you're hoping that your conversation is going to change things and you're putting your weight on that, don't have the conversation. Because you're committed to an outcome that you don't have the power to bring about. And if you get yourself in that conundrum, you can make things worse for you and the relationship and them, because you haven't really thought through the fact that they might really choose the addiction. And you might have to step back and accept that, and accept it might be staying and they stay sick, staying and you get help, or not staying and using that as a leverage tool to see if change can happen. But be prepared that change may not happen. And you might be on the road of just growing yourself. You can stay and grow, you can leave and grow, you can separate and grow, whatever your options are. Growth has to be your choice. If you do that, you will be successful in your journey. If we can help you, 719-278-3708. I've helped thousands of partners walk through this process, regardless of how the addict responds. I hope this has been helpful for you. And if you have yet to subscribe, please do that. If you have a question, put it in the box, and we will see you next time.